Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Send me and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. Um, Let me go ahead and tell y'all, man, that the other thing that Shahid Bolsen did not factor in um, when he began to speak about how real men know that they're doing a job as men because they're being taken for granted, and that men should not really want to be, they should not want their efforts to really be acknowledged. Um, that it's pretty much the job of women to just consume the provision and then take the man for granted. Um, there's something that he didn't know about, and this is partially because he's being a responsible Muslim and he's not keeping up with things that he doesn't know have an effect on people. So, see, a lot of this is dangerous because it comes out of a good intention. Much of his ignorance is ignorance born out of a good intention, an intention to be responsible and to be pious. And that's part of why I address this. He does not keep up with celebrities. If he hears about what goes on with celebrities, he didn't have a choice but to hear about it. There was no way it was going to not be talked about in front of him before he hears about a celebrity. That's okay. Why should he have to keep up with celebrities? Why should I have to keep up? And why should you? Entertainers at that, not even so much politicians or lawmakers or police chiefs or fire captains, but just entertainers, singers and dancers and sports players. But I want you guys to understand what that leads to and why it is that when it comes down to what goes on between men and women, it is important for men to pretty much study from any source that is available where the knowledge is there. And if you are a Muslim man, it is not less important for you to study it. It is more important because our behavior with women is even more strictly governed, and it should be. And their behavior with us is more strictly governed, and it should be until they fail to listen to the governing rules, which they're beginning to do in the West and increasingly so outside of the West as well. There are more and more men in Saudi that are refusing to marry, and even middle-aged men are aware of these younger men now refusing to marry because they say that the marriage won't last very long. You still have to pay the dowry, and she still is going to demand the dowry. And the women that are going to stay the shortest length of time are the ones who demand the highest dowries, not their dads, not their moms, the women. They will demand the highest dowries because they ain't going to stay. This is going on here in Saudi Arabia. Men deciding, never mind, screw this. We're not seeking marriage, right? At least not with these local women, not here. Those men will look and try to marry somewhere else. And the thing is that the government has a fine for men under 30 who marry outside the country and then bring the wives in. You can do it, but you pay a fine to the government. These men are saying, I'll pay the government the fine. I'll still come out ahead. Because if I borrowed money to pay a dowry to get married to this woman, I'm going to owe that money for decades. And she's going to leave soon. She will leave and get the divorce. So I got to pay her to stay with me a short time, cause arguments, get up, leave, keep the money. And then what is she going to do after that? Well, hell, after that, I was just the starter husband. Now, because she's been married, her virginity is not a big issue because she wasn't supposed to be a virgin anymore. But this means she can take my money and play with other men. And what kind of men are the men with whom they play? Well, that's not something a lot of these men understand. But I'm about to tell them, guys that are in the gym, guys that actually are jacked, that are ripped, these are the men with whom the women want to play. Now, those men may or may not do it, but these are the men with whom the women want to play. These men get the muscles, women will go up and give them their phone numbers. These men with the muscles, women will stop them in traffic after they get a lip operation. How do my lips look? They do that when these guys got some muscle. That's how they'll operate. That's how they will participate in the mating market. And even if they're not really getting a lot of these men, because many men here would rather not fornicate, it's against what we believe, and there are still laws against it if you can prove it, though it's damn near impossible to enforce. These women will still do that, and they're not going to turn around and start looking for responsible husbands, of course, until they're old and tired of working. And we already know what the playbook is. And that's why I sit up and I say, for you as Muslim men, whether, you see, I'm not telling you to follow Rollo Tomasi. I'm telling you to study Rollo Tomasi. When Shahid Bolsen tells you not to become one of the so-called Tomasiyin, yeah, he's right, because those guys do have reactions you're not allowed to have. You can't follow Myron Gaines. Myron Gaines has already blasphemed against the religion, called parts of it shady. That's not allowed for us. And then on top of that, he sits up and tells men, you need to have a body count of 50 before you get married. And then when men go through the damage that it takes to acquire a body count of less than an eighth of 50, yeah, divide 50 by 8. I know, right? You can't do it. But to get to less than a half of a half of a half, you see? To get to a body count of 6, you got to go through some damage. Yeah, you as a man trying to get to a body count of 6, you're going to undertake some things. And that's one thing Saadia Khan said. This is another thing. He didn't mention Saadia Khan. Saadia Khan is sitting up here talking about, well, her Muslim parents, but what is she doing? She couldn't put a hijab on to save her life. When it became known that she's still trying to sell her looks to sell her advice to make some money, she went after folks that said anything about it. You got to pay buckets of money to call her up and talk to her for a short time. She turns around and kept calling this man, pick up, because he found out she was using a waist filter on a video. So I would say to you, yeah, don't follow Tomasi. Study him, but don't follow him. Study Myron Gaines, but don't follow him. You study them to see what the pitfalls are. They're going to tell you wrong. That's where Shahid Bolsen's right. Where Shahid Bolsen's wrong is that he takes a very simplistic view of what it takes to be a happily married husband, which would be true in an ideal situation, and he ignores the fact that what you're living in is very anti-ideal. That you live in a society that takes women, even religious women, and it trains them to look at that which is moral and upright and will make sense, and make sure that the environment does not actually be that way, stay that way. They've heard all the positive sounding talking points, and their job is to make sure that it's not true. So, just be yourself. Okay, just be yourself. Well, you guys have learned. If you are just yourself, you're going to only attract women that are not attractive. That means you're not really attracting them. They're just looking for anybody. You're in an environment in which the women look and they say, well, if he likes me, I'm not going to like him anymore. So the minute she's your type visually at all, you're no longer her type if you were before. They are trained to be toxic and to keep things toxic permanently. And he wants you to act like that's not really what's going on. Yeah, the hell it is. That's why I can sit up in Accountable Commentaries live streams, even when he's telling Keisha's, you don't be over here. Don't be listening over here. This ain't for you. Well, it's his channel. He has a right to do that. I choose not to on mine. But I can sit up and say his observations are correct. And then Shahid Bolsen gets up and says, you know you're a man if you're taken for granted. You're really being a man. You're doing what a man should do. That's how you know you're doing your job as a man. They take you for granted. And then turns around and says, now, we men want to be respected and appreciated. Well, that's not being taken for granted. And so then I can't co-sign it. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't co-sign it. That's why it is that I can't co-sign that. That's why I can sit up and listen to someone ain't Muslim, who's living in that situation, and say, yep, this observation is valid. I saw it myself. And then turn around and here he comes and he's talking and he believes in the same guidance in which I believe. We have witnessed, you're Muslim long enough, you start to witness the truth of this. That's why we're so convinced and we seem to be so dogmatic. After being Muslim long enough, and when I say long enough, it can be months for some people, you become convinced because of what you can actually witness that corroborates what you had to believe in the beginning. It's a testimony of faith when you start. After a while, it's no longer really just about faith. You've actually seen the proof of it. And yet and still, Shahid Bolsen will sit up and, because he does not believe in studying what you can about Cardi B, not because she's important, but because the reactions of the mass of women in that society to her is important. It's not to follow their reactions that I tell Muslim men to learn about the red pill. It's because as Muslim men, we are supposed to be chaste. We have the guidance to get around certain things. Chasing a high body count is going to lead to a type of destruction, slow, but it's there. However, you're also in an environment in which your attempts to be chaste are punished by the women themselves, even the religious women, if you live in the West and if you live in a westernizing Muslim society, like Saudi Arabia. There are women that don't really want much to do with virgin men. They're looking for the same few men. They don't want men that don't have a history with other women. They don't want men that they can't smell other women on. They're not looking for that. And that's why they'll sit up here and look at a man that is just completely, he's unmarried and he doesn't have girlfriends, doesn't seem to have girlfriends. They'll look at a guy like that and they don't want anything to do with him. And then when they do get married and they done slept with the husband, all of a sudden they worry that the husband's cheating. Well, they weren't open to do stuff like this when they were unmarried. But now they worry that all of a sudden a whole bunch of women out there throwing the punani at their husband. It's not just mate guarding. It tells you something about their logic. They got a messy side to them too. Don't get it twisted. You think Arabs all together. No, you want to see who the Arab is the most difficult with? It's another Arab man. You want to see who an Arab woman is the most difficult with? It's another Arab woman. They're highly judgmental of each other. There's a unity they have and a cooperation that they have, but then there's also a very high judgmental nature they have towards each other. Not only that, but let them move somewhere where Arabs are a minority and one of them starts a business, all the rest are looking for the hookup. You think their businesses never go under? No, that's not true. They open up a business amongst each other and it doesn't always succeed. They open up a business amongst us and it succeeds because we don't boycott them. We don't walk in looking for the hookup. Oh, you thought they didn't have this problem. But getting back to Shahid Bolsen, you see, take a look at Cardi B and what she's doing now. We should look at this. Here's why. It's not because Cardi B is an example. She's an example of what not to do. But you need to look at her because you got to know that there are Muslim women in the West and in the East that look at Cardi B and think, okay, I'm going to do what she did. That's why. You also have to look at the reaction that she got and the reaction she did not get from the mass of the women in the societies that understand everything that she says without a translator. Clarissa Shields dated Papoose. I think there's still a couple. Papoose got with Clarissa when it was very clear they are going to get a divorce. And why they're going to get a divorce? Because she cheated on him. That's why. They're getting the divorce. If it's I think it's already finalized. That's the end of it. They're not going to stay together. And why would they? Oh, he bouncing on her. As he should. I don't mean bouncing up and down on top of her. I mean, he's leaving her. Okay, now let's fast forward. But see, she done already cheated on him with a man that resembles him somewhat. Visually speaking, Papoose and Easy the Block Captain are the same profile. Even though he had a not, I mean, they would have been the kind of buddies everybody thought. If they had met under different circumstances, they would have become the kind of buddies everybody thought were brothers or first cousins or something like that, even though they would have just been buddies. But since Easy was laying down with Remy Ma while she was married to Papoose, after he held her down for years in prison and didn't have any scandals. In other words, his chastity to her benefit and her convenience while she was locked up, and his raising her kid while she was locked up for some dumb stuff over $2,000 that he could have easily just handed back to her to keep her free, was rewarded with a punishment of cheating on him with a man that would not have done the same thing for her. Now, what does that tell you? That's why I tell you Muslims study this stuff. That's why I have this channel. That's why I got to answer Shahid Bolsen in this part 2 after a part 1. It ain't because I hate him, but it's because he has a simplistic view. He does not have the tactical view of studying the foolishness and the foolishness of your opposition, or even just people that just ain't you, so that you can see the guidance system. I mean, if you got a new GPS system, you remember when they used to have the handheld GPS units that were not in the phones? Y'all remember them? Garmin, TomTom. I remember them because I had a good one. Well, guess what? If you wanted to see how good those things really were, it's real simple. Follow somebody that didn't have one. See where they went. And if you could, see where they were trying to go. Here, you navigate to this address without that. Go ahead. And watching missed turns, get in the wrong lane, fighting traffic to try to make the correct turn at the last second because that's that. Meanwhile, you decide to navigate to an address, you good. It's the same thing. So you watch them without that sort of guidance and you see what the hell happens. You see where it leads. Cardi B ain't even told her parents. She's scared to tell her parents. The whole issue, though, is that the only reason she was with Offset is because Offset got other women. That's the whole point. Stephen Diggs gets other women. She's choosing men based on how many other women they get and then leaving because they cheat. And look how long it takes to even develop that much sense. Oh, I'm going to leave because you cheated. If she did that in the beginning, she still wouldn't have any sense. The sensible thing to do is exactly what the hell Western women will tell you they shouldn't have to do. Get with men who aren't running around with a bunch of other women. And that could mean get with normal men who can't just get a bunch of other women. Maybe 2 or 3. Maybe it'll be a while before the next woman throws herself at him for him to turn her down. But that's who you get with. There are guys like that are your type. They're just not every other woman's type. That's why I don't look at women and say, well, you have a hard time finding and I know what you're going through. No, shuck that fit. There are guys out there that are your type, but they're not other women's type. And you pass them up because they're not other women's type. You pass up guys you want because other chicks. Shahid Bolsen, you're going to have to come to grips, sir, with the fact that it is chaos to a certain extent. But it is an organized, it is a planned chaos. That the women of the West are making choices in men based on anti-morality, based on even evil. And the Muslim women are following them. And these Muslim men sitting up saying, well, we're going to walk the path of chastity, but that doesn't mean celibacy. That means getting married, are finally seeing that if they do not choose celibacy, which is an unnatural extreme, ask the Catholic Church about it, then there's no chastity. And then even if they get married, they're going to lose everything. And in the attempt to get married, they still may never get married and still lose everything. That's what you're facing. And you might say, well, you're pretty much saying that the women should go ahead and settle for men that they find ugly, and the men should not have to settle for women that we find ugly. Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm saying. And here's why. The reason is because we're not walking around here just finding women to be ugly all of a sudden. That's not how we are. We're being pretty much told, and they're doing everything they can to try to condition men to think we should have to settle for the worst looking single digit percentiles of women. And they're still being told to have attitudes. The women are out here being told to find most men ugly for dumb things like not having a bunch of other women, not being 6'2", and that even when they don't find a particular man ugly, they should look to see if their friends do before they make a decision, because they should only be with guys that are being competed for by other women. And the Muslim women are not better. My daughter told me about a friend of hers that had a boyfriend and he pushed her down the stairs and now she hates men. And I had to tell my daughter, you're going to have to watch this chick. She hates men. I mean, yeah, her boyfriend was a piece of crap pushing her down the stairs. I get that. I'm not letting him off the hook. That's the difference. The difference is that, but see, as men, we men are going to look at that situation and say, if this is who the hell he is, how does she wind up with that? You got men that are the opposite. They wouldn't hurt a woman. They don't even retaliate. Those men are avoided like the plague. Women avoid these men so much so that there are men that are just in the middle of the road. Women assume that those men in the middle of the road are also wimps that would never retaliate, and they avoid them too. That means that he had a beat a bitch potential, and she smelled it on him, and that's what she wanted. And then found out that that potential was real, and now she hates men. That's what that means. That's why I'm telling you, you better watch her. You're her friend, so to speak, because y'all got friends in common, but that is not someone from whom you can learn. Not because of what he did, but because that's why she picked him. And now hates men because of it. She hates your dad. She hates your brother because of how we were born. And we never hated her, and we wouldn't do something like this to her. So I know firsthand, Mr. Bolsen, how bad this stuff gets. The fact that Cardi B is not facing a mass reaction from the women that form her customer base. The fact that her popularity is not dropping after she has confessed to drugging and robbing men, after she is now pregnant with a boyfriend, before her marriage is completely dissolved, before the divorce is finalized. Tells you something. And Muslim women are not exceptions to this like they should be. The ones who are silent because if they said something, they would get jumped. First verbally, then physically. That tells you something. And you got these young Muslim men that want to walk a right path, but they're not trying to condemn themselves to lives of celibacy, and that's exactly what the walk is waiting on them. So you're literally looking at men who are looking at two paths of destruction laid out for them. One involving fornication, if they can get it. Another one involving celibacy, which is another destruction. And if they do choose to get married, it's still going to be celibacy while married and all the disadvantages of the marriage while still being celibate. Oh no, the mortgage is yours, you pay that. The light bills are yours, you pay that. But you ain't getting nothing. Not a meal, not no drawers, not a hug, nothing from her. And if she thinks you'll let her get away with it, she'll bring other men's babies to you for you to raise. And you never hit that. That's what these men have laid out in front of them. And the Muslim men oftentimes are facing it worse. And all you can do is sit up and tell men these simplistic solutions. Well, you don't really need to know about what women think. You just need to know about what your wives think. No, that's where you prioritize. You prioritize your wife's taste. They still got to know women's taste. I mean, there are women that are otherwise good women in their behavior, but they still feel immense pressure to leave a man that other women don't want. There are women that are otherwise good women, but the reason they haven't left their husbands is because other women want their husbands, and the husbands just don't know that. I say that those women are shallow when they're not fully grown, but they're not bad women. It's something that a lot of the men can't detect. It is a problem. A serious one. I just want you to understand these men have to study something. And you can't just sit up and say, hey, turn that off. Don't learn from this. Don't listen. Ignore it. You can't tell them to just simply ignore that. That's been a problem with men of our age group. There were people telling my son, don't get married yet. Just be patient. Just be patient. That's like saying just be yourself. Yeah, that's pretty much a way that's going to turn almost every single Muslim woman against a man because he's just himself. Because these Muslim women are following other women. And in the West, that's how they are. You're just yourself. That's not good enough. You need to know some things about us that we'll never tell you. And then you need to know some things about us that we don't even admit to ourselves. And then you need to know some things about us that we don't know about ourselves so that you can manipulate us. Otherwise, we would never like you. And that's if we know how to behave in every other facet of life. When it comes to you, the men, we're going to be stupid. And I tell the men, don't marry women like this. Don't even discuss marriage with them. But you still got to know you still got to know how many of them are like that. You got to know parts of the world where the majority are like that and leave those parts of the world. That's what I tell these young men. And you're sitting up here saying, oh, be patient. Guys our age, we're sitting up telling young guys my son's age, just be patient. Nope, that doesn't work. That does not work. Why? You sit up here, you'll just be patient. You'll finally, maybe you get married later on. You're the virgin and she's not. What? Wait a minute, you mean to tell me I was sitting up here being patient, holding it in, finally getting married as a virgin man, and now she ain't no virgin. And she's not supposed to confess this about herself. So once she repented, she did nothing wrong. But I could have never brought the same issue to her. Oh, dear Lord. That's what's waiting on these men out there. And you're just telling them to walk blindly into it. Now, you could easily say, Mr. Bolsen, that if the man did what he was supposed to do when the woman misbehaved, then he's the one that's not going to go to hell for that. You could easily say that. And that would be technically true. It's not God oppressing people that I'm worried about. But you and I both lived through some situations. You lived through harsher situations than I have because of a sacrifice you made that I didn't. You put a man to sleep for trying to fornicate with a Muslim woman. You were protecting a hypothetical Muslim woman that didn't even exist. You were protecting them from this guy that wanted to fornicate with him. But in the process, he never woke up. And you sat on death row as if you had planned his execution. Took ass whoopings from the Emirati police or the prison guards on death row. You've made sacrifices I haven't made. And this is actually very typical of people from your heritage that accept Islam. You guys go harder in the paint than many African American Muslims do. We try to get ready and stay ready, but you cats come in ready. Like what you did. You took someone from your heritage, put his ass to sleep, and he never woke up. And you weren't going to snitch on yourself either. That's a good thing, sir. But because of the sacrifices that you have made, you have seen even more than I have, and I know about this, but you have better seen than I have witnessed that while you don't have to worry about God oppressing you, people will oppress you, and oppression can drive you mad and even lead to apostasy. That's why I'm recording these parts 1 and 2. And telling the young Muslim men to do what you said to not do. Study this stuff. No, you're right, don't follow Rollo Tomasi. You're right, don't follow Rich Cooper. Don't take the same reactions they do. Myron Gaines, Myron Gaines is an example of what happens when you listen to those guys and follow them. Like their reactions are befitting of a Muslim, they're not. But by the same token, you do have to study the situation, and it is bad, it is gruesome. And as I stated before, it is misandry. And I'm not obsessed with getting women to like men per se. I am obsessed with getting men to understand how much women hate them, consciously and subconsciously. And I'm obsessed with getting men to understand what they need to do to prepare the men in societies where this is not a problem yet, so that they can stop this from ever becoming a problem, because the problem is exporting itself from where it is to where it's not. It's spreading on its own. And we don't know how far gone that has gotten. Saudi is already at the brink. I'd say it's past the point of no return right now. It's just too soon and too new. But I'd say the Saudi's past the point of no return. Marriage is done here. It's over. You can hang it up over here. So I hope that what I said helps again. And again, thanks for listening. As always, black heart, black mind, black out. Assalamu alaikum, black heterosexual non-select male power, because they don't like it, and black patriarchy until extinction of Judgment Day. Thank you all for flying with us here on Jet Black Air, where the phrase jet black is also a verb. Keep jetting black with us till the wings and the wheels fall off. Gender, justice, forever.